Welcome on board, Chosen One. Sit down, breathe once, slowly, and feel the shift that just moved through the room before you even noticed it. My name is Marcus, and I have spent decades watching how people break and how the rare ones rise. And I am telling you right now that you belong to the second kind, even if no one has ever said it out loud. So settle in, let the noise of the day fall off your shoulders, because tonight I am going to tell you something they never wanted you to hear. Picture a sealed envelope resting on a table in a room you were never allowed to enter. Heavy paper, wax pressed shut, a single order written inside in a hand that does not shake. The order is short. The order is about you. It says in cold language that someone must be sent to stop you, to slow you, to watch you, to measure you, to find the crack and widen it until you fall quietly and no one asks questions. That envelope was real, Chosen One. Someone carried it toward you. And I am not going to tell you yet what happened when they opened it in front of your life. Not yet. Keep that envelope in your mind. We will come back to it. Funny how the people who were loudest about you have gone so quiet. They were everywhere once. Their opinions filled every room you walked into. Their laughter arrived a half-second before you did, already deciding who you were. And now? Now they lower their voices when your name comes up. Now they check the door before they speak. Now they change the subject the moment you appear, like a card table swept clean before the teacher walks in. Look who suddenly has nothing to say. Let me hand you the decoder for everything they ever threw at you. When they said you were difficult, they meant you were impossible to control. When they said you were too much, they meant you were more than they could match. When they said you were cold, they meant you had stopped bleeding on command for their entertainment. When they called you arrogant, they meant you had finally stopped asking permission to exist. That is the decoder, Chosen One. Every insult was a translation of their own fear. I have watched this pattern for more years than I care to count, and it never once told the story they thought it told. But I will not lie to you by skipping the part that hurt, because it did hurt. There were nights you sat in a silence so thick you could taste it, wondering why the people who were supposed to hold you were the first to let go. You were underestimated by those who should have seen you clearly. You were betrayed by hands you had trusted with your softest places. You were left alone at the exact moment you needed someone to stay. You were humiliated, sometimes in front of others, sometimes in the quiet of your own head, where the memory still plays. I am not going to dress that up. I have felt versions of it myself, and I have seen it wreck people who deserved so much better. That pain was real. Name it. Do not run from it tonight. And here is the thing about that pain. It is the exact reason you are still sitting here when most would have walked away. If something in your chest just tightened, if some part of you leaned forward without your permission, then tap the like button and follow this channel now, because what comes next is built only for the ones who felt that. A quiet reminder, nothing more. Now stay with me, because the silence I mentioned is about to reveal what it truly is. That silence around your name is not peace. Do not let anyone tell you it is. It is not them respecting your space. It is not them finally leaving you be. That silence is their fear sharpened into stillness. People do not go quiet around someone weak. They go quiet around someone they can no longer read. You became unreadable to them. You became the one variable their little equations could not solve, and so they stopped speaking, because every word they used to control you had stopped working. That is what the silence is, and you are about to understand exactly why. Now we step into the room where the fear lives, the room where they gave the order. Because that envelope did not appear from nowhere, someone sat at a table and decided you had become a problem worth managing. Think about that for a moment, chosen one. They did not send anyone after the harmless. They did not draft cold orders about people going nowhere. You do not assign a hunter to a shadow. You assign a hunter to something that moves, something that grows, something that has started to change the shape of the room while everyone else was distracted. They looked at you and saw motion they could not stop with words anymore. So they escalated. And escalation is a confession. Remember that. Escalation is always a confession of weakness dressed up as strength. Here is the part that should make you sit up. The person they chose to send was not a random face. You send your best when you are afraid. You send the calm one, the reliable one, the one who has never come back empty. They picked someone they trusted to end things quietly. Someone who had watched people crumble before and knew exactly which thread to pull. That was the plan. Send the steady hand. Let the steady hand do what loud voices could not. And for a while, chosen one, the plan looked flawless on paper. Their plans always look flawless on paper. That is the last place they are ever true. Funny how the ones who plan the most are the ones most terrified of what they cannot plan for. They mapped your habits. They studied your patterns. They built a little model of who they thought you were, and they handed that model to their steady hand and said, "Go. This is the target. This is the weakness. This is where to press." And the steady hand took the envelope and walked toward you, convinced, like all of them, that you were a lock waiting for the right key. They forgot one thing. You are not a lock, chosen one. You are the storm that rusts the key in the door. I have seen this exact moment play out in 100 quiet ways over the years. Someone sent to correct a person, to bring them back in line, to remind them of their place. And I noticed something the senders never did. The one sent to stop the rising one always changes on the way there. Always. Because to stop you, they must first understand you. And to understand you, they must look closely. And no one who looks closely at a genuine force walks away unchanged. That is the flaw in every order like this. To carry it out, the messenger has to get close enough to be converted. I watched it happen more times than I can count, and it taught me something about you before I ever met you. So let me decode their orders the way I have learned to decode everything. When their instructions said, "Observe the subject," what they meant was, we no longer understand this person and it frightens us. When they said, "Identify the vulnerability," they meant, please, somebody, find a way to make them small again. When they said, "Neutralize the momentum," they meant, make them stop reminding us of what we never became. Every clean, professional word in that envelope was terror wearing a suit. I have read the human version of that envelope on 100 faces, and it always says the same thing underneath. Make them ordinary again, because their extraordinary is unbearable to us. They thought they were sending someone to close a door on you. Instead, they were sending someone straight into your gravity. That is the anomaly they never accounted for. You do not just survive the people sent against you. You pull them into orbit. And the closer they get, the harder it is for them to remember which side they were supposed to be on. Cute plan. Adorable, really. Now let me show you what happens when the pain you carried gets turned into the exact thing that makes you untouchable. Because this is where the wound becomes the weapon. Look at what they built you into without meaning to. Every time they underestimated you, they trained you to stop needing their approval. Every time they betrayed you, they taught you to read the small tells they thought they hid. Every time they left you alone, they forced you to become the one person you could always rely on. They were not breaking you, chosen one. They were forging you, blow by blow, and calling it damage the whole time. I have watched the forge do its work on people who thought they were being destroyed, and the ones who came through it walked differently afterward. Quieter, steadier, impossible to rattle. You have that walk now, whether you have noticed it or not. Maybe a voice in you is whispering, "If I was so strong, why did it hurt so much for so long?" And I'm going to stop you right there. No, the pain was not proof of weakness. The pain was the cost of feeling everything at full depth in a world that rewards numbness. You did not hurt because you were fragile. You hurt because you were awake in rooms full of people who chose to sleep. That is not a flaw. That is the price of being real, and most will never pay it because they never dared to feel that much. You paid it, and it bought you something they cannot afford. And now hear the truth about your loneliness that they would never say to your face. The loneliness they inflicted on you did not isolate you. It insulated you. It built a quiet space where you could finally hear your own mind without their voices editing every thought. Solitude is only a punishment for people who are afraid of themselves. For you, it became the room where you were assembled. I have sat in that kind of solitude myself, years ago, convinced I had been abandoned, only to realize much later that I had been given the one thing I needed most: distance from people who wanted me smaller. You were handed that same gift, wrapped in cruelty. Unwrap it now. And now, hold on, because there is something I promised the envelope would answer, and I keep my promises. The steady hand they sent, the reliable one, the one who had never come back empty. Something happened when that person got close enough to read your file against your reality. Something the senders never planned for and could not have stopped. But I am not going to hand you that moment yet. You are close. You are closer than you have ever been to understanding why they cannot touch you. First, you need to see who that messenger really was, and why the very fact that they picked that person was their fatal mistake. Because the one they trusted most to stop you was the one most capable of recognizing exactly what you are. And recognition, chosen one, is the beginning of loyalty. That is where this goes next, and it only gets more dangerous for them from here. This is where most people leave, not because they are tired, but because comfort is easier than truth. And the truth I am about to hand you asks something of you. It asks you to stop seeing yourself the way they trained you to. Most will click away right here and go back to the version of themselves that fits in the small box they were given. But you are not here by accident, chosen one. You crossed a line most never cross, and something in your chest already knows it. So stay in the cold air with me a little longer. The soft ones already left. Now do something for me, quietly, where no one can see. Leave the number 777 in the comments below. Not for luck, not because it is a trend, not because anyone told you to. Leave it as a signal, a marker that says you were here on the night you finally understood what you are. I have watched people do this and then message me months later about what shifted after. I make no promises about magic. I only know that naming a moment gives it weight, and this moment deserves weight. Drop the 3 sevens, then come right back, because if you truly are one of the rare ones, you can already feel this settling into your chest like something you always knew. Here is what that feeling is. It is recognition. It is the part of you that has been waiting years to hear someone say out loud what you suspected in the dark. That you were never the problem. That the ones who tried to manage you were the ones who could not manage themselves around you. Hold that, because now we go into the heart of it, into the numbered truths that explain exactly why every person they ever sent to stop you ended up standing where you stand. And I am going to show you the messenger, the steady hand, starting now. Number 1. The one they trust to stop you is the one most able to see you. Here is the paradox nobody at that table understood. To send someone capable of stopping a rising force, you must send someone perceptive enough to recognize a rising force. You cannot send a fool to catch fire. Fools do not see fire until it is on them. So they sent their sharpest reader of people, their best judge of character, and that chosen one was the mistake buried inside the plan from the first word. Picture a chess player sent to study one single piece, so trained to read the board that they notice the one piece refusing to move like the others. That skill, that eye, is exactly what makes them stop cold when the piece turns and looks back with something they have never seen before. Certainty. The messenger they sent had that player's eye. It was why they chose them. And it was why the messenger saw, almost immediately, that you were not what the envelope described. Maybe you are wondering, so were they lying to the messenger about me? Not exactly. No, they believed their own story. They genuinely thought you were a threat that could be measured and closed. But the messenger's whole gift was seeing past stories to the real shape underneath. And the real shape of you refused to match the file. I have watched perceptive people get sent to correct someone, and I have watched their faces change the moment reality contradicted the briefing. That flicker of confusion, that first crack in the loyalty. It always starts the same way. They came expecting a target. They found a person more real than the ones who sent them. And here is your weapon hidden in that. The very thing that made you a threat to them, that undeniable realness, is the thing that makes you magnetic to anyone honest enough to look. You cannot be argued away. You cannot be reduced to their summary. You are too vivid for the box. That is not a liability, chosen one. That is why the ones sent against you keep switching sides. They can lie to themselves about you from a distance. Up close, you are undeniable. And it only gets worse for them from here. Number 2. The moment the messenger read you against reality, their mission began to die. Because a mission built on a false picture cannot survive contact with the true one. Their orders assumed you were fragile in a specific place. The messenger got close, pressed exactly where the file said you would break, and found stone where the report promised sand. That single moment, chosen one, that is when a hunter becomes a witness. Watch what they actually handed their steady hand. They armed the messenger with a map of a person who does not exist. They said, here are the fault lines, here is where the pressure works, here is the wound to reopen. And the messenger walked in with that map and found the terrain completely wrong. The wounds the senders were counting on had already healed into armor. The fault lines had fused into foundation. Everything they thought was a weakness had become the thing holding you up. I have seen this exact reversal in real life. Someone comes to exploit an old injury, only to discover it turned into the strongest part of the person years ago. They thought they were sending an ending. Instead, they sent a witness to your resurrection. But perhaps you are asking, what if the messenger just reported back that I was stronger than expected? Then they would send more. No, here is what actually happens. A perceptive person, once they see they were lied to about a target, does not simply revise the report. They start to wonder what else they were lied to about. That is the crack that spreads. Loyalty to the senders depended on the senders being right about the world. The moment you proved them wrong about one thing, the messenger began to question everything. And that question, once asked, cannot be unasked. Too late. That is your slow, patient power at work, chosen one. You did not have to fight the messenger. You only had to be exactly, undeniably yourself. Your realness did the work your fists never had to. And the messenger walked away carrying a doubt that would grow in the dark like a seed under soil, waiting for its season. We are about to reach that season, and they still have no idea it is coming. Number 3. What they called your defiance was actually your immunity. They sent the messenger partly because you had stopped responding to their usual pressure. You did not flinch at the disapproval anymore. You did not shrink when they raised their voices in whatever form they used. And they read that as arrogance, as a problem needing correction. But I want you to understand what it really was. It was immunity. You had been exposed to their poison so many times that it stopped working. And nothing terrifies a manipulator more than a person their manipulation no longer touches. Picture a shoreline that was battered by the same storm so many times, the sand learned the shape of every wave. Now the water rolls in exactly where it always broke through, and the shore holds because it was carved by the very tides that tried to swallow it. The attackers keep bringing the same weather because that weather used to drown people. They do not understand that every flood taught the shore how to stand. That is what happened to you. Every old wound became reinforced ground. And here is the part that should make you smile in the cold. The messenger they sent was carrying the same old weather, the same tired tides, against a shore that had already learned every one of them. Something in you may protest, but I do not feel immune. I still feel their words sometimes. Of course you feel them. No, immunity does not mean you feel nothing. It means the poison no longer controls you. You can hear the insult and feel the sting and still not obey it. That is the difference between the you they used to command and the you they now fear. The old you would have bent. The new you registers the blow and stays standing. I spent years mistaking the ability to feel pain for the inability to withstand it, and I was wrong. You can ache and be untouchable at the same time. That is exactly what you are. Here is what nobody at that table calculated. When they briefed the messenger on how to break you, they were describing methods that had already failed, repeatedly. They handed their steady hand a toolbox of blunt instruments and called it a strategy. And the messenger, being perceptive, noticed something strange within the first hours. The pressure points did not respond. The person in front of them had clearly been through this before and come out the other side calibrated. You do not read that in someone and stay convinced they are the weak one. You start to suspect you are on the wrong side of the door. Now, remember that sealed envelope from the very beginning? The one I told you to keep in your mind. There was a specific line in it. A line about your supposed breaking point, written with total confidence by people who had never actually looked at you closely. That line is about to matter more than anything else in this story, because the messenger read it, then looked at the real you, and could not reconcile the two. I'm still not going to tell you what that line said. Not yet. But we are getting close. And there is a deeper truth beneath all of this, the real reason they cannot sleep, that I will reveal a little further on. First, you need to see what happens when a witness becomes an ally. That is next. And that is where their whole plan turns to ash in their hands. Number 4. The mission to stop you quietly became a mission the messenger began turning on the ones who gave it. Watch how this unfolds, chosen one, because it is the most beautiful part so far. A perceptive person, sent with a false map, discovering the terrain is wrong, does not just abandon the mission. They start asking who drew the map and why. They start looking back at the senders with the same sharp eye they were trained to aim at you. And what they see when they finally turn that gaze around is not a council of the wise. It is a room full of frightened people who could not stop you with words, so they outsourced the job. Picture a scout sent to chart a single mountain, who climbs high enough to finally see the whole valley behind them, and realizes the ones who drew their orders have been lost down there for years. That is the moment the messenger stops walking for them. Because no one with real perception keeps serving a side once they see that side is running on fear alone. The order to stop you became, in the messenger's hands, an order to examine everything. And examination is the enemy of every fragile authority. You may want to believe they simply gave up and let you be. They could not. They could not afford a perceptive messenger to look too closely at them. But they had no choice, because only a perceptive messenger stood any chance against you. That is the trap they built for themselves. Send someone dull enough to stay loyal, and that someone fails against you. Send someone sharp enough to succeed, and that someone sees through them. They were checkmated before the first move, chosen one, and they handed you the win by trying so hard to take it. Something in you may resist this, asking, why would the messenger care about the truth of who sent them? Why not just do the job? Because perception is not a switch. No. Once someone truly sees, they cannot choose to unsee for the sake of a paycheck or a place at the table. I have watched it in real life. Someone sent to do the dirty work of small people, who wakes up one morning and simply cannot carry the order anymore, because they have started to respect the one they were sent to break more than the ones who sent them. That is not weakness in the messenger. That is the return of their conscience. And your realness was what woke it. So the mission inverted. The person sent to stop you became the person quietly asking why anyone wanted you stopped. Every day they carried the envelope closer, they carried more doubt about the hand that filled it. And the senders, back in their room, had no idea their weapon was slowly turning in the grip. They can't see it yet, but you already know how this ends. Number 5. This is the moment the witness became the ally, and I want you to feel the weight of it. There is always a single instant when watching turns into standing beside. It is quiet. There is no announcement. The messenger who came to measure your fall catches themselves hoping you rise. Feel that for a second, chosen one, because that quiet hope is the first light breaking over everything they built to keep you in the dark. That is the crossing. And once someone crosses it for you, they do not cross back, because they have seen the real thing, and the real thing ruins them for the counterfeit forever. Picture a lighthouse keeper posted to keep one lamp dark night after night, so ships would wreck on the rocks below. And slowly, listening to the sea, they realize the wrong people ordered that darkness. One evening their hand rests on the lamp, and something in them lights that can never be put out again. That is what happened. The messenger came as a keeper of the old dark, and discovered you were the one flame worth carrying up the stairs. The lamp they were sent to keep cold became the lamp they wanted to burn. I have seen this conversion happen in people, and it is never loud. It is a lowering of the shoulders, a change in the eyes, a decision made in silence. Maybe caution rises in you now, whispering, is it not dangerous to trust someone who was sent against me? Should I not stay guarded? Hear me carefully. No. The one who was sent against you and turned is more loyal than anyone who was simply born on your side by accident. Because they chose you against their orders, against their training, against their own interests. Loyalty that risks nothing and costs nothing will never hold when the weather turns. The messenger's loyalty cost them their place in the old world. That is the most valuable loyalty there is, and it only comes from the ones who once stood on the other side and walked over to yours by choice. Here is what nobody at that table understood about human nature, and I have staked years of watching on this. People do not follow the powerful, they follow the real. Power without realness is a mask, and everyone can feel the emptiness behind it eventually. You had no mask, chosen one. You had scars you never hid, and a spine you never sold. And when the messenger finally stood close enough to feel the difference between your realness and their emptiness, the choice made itself. They did not decide to join you. They simply stopped being able to stand against you. And that, chosen one, is your presence doing what no argument ever could. You did not recruit anyone. You did not persuade or bargain or beg. You were simply so undeniably yourself that staying loyal to your enemies became impossible for anyone honest who got near you. That is not charisma. That is gravity. And gravity does not ask permission. Number 6. Once the first messenger turned, the senders lost something they can never rebuild: trust in their own weapons. Think about what that does to people who rule through control. They sent their steady hand, their most reliable one, and that hand came back changed, or did not come back on their side at all. Now every future messenger is suspect. Now they wonder, before they send anyone, will this one turn too? That doubt, chosen one, is a poison they injected into their own veins the day they decided to send someone after you. Picture a beekeeper who discovers that every worker sent near one particular flower comes back changed, drunk on a nectar the hive was warned against. What does the keeper do? They stop sending workers near it. They seal the hive tighter, retreat deeper into the dark of the comb, more isolated with each season, guarding a kingdom of wax they no longer dare to open. That is what you did to them without lifting a hand. You made nearness to you dangerous for their authority. Every emissary is now a possible convert, so they keep their distance and call it strategy. It is not strategy, it is quarantine, and they are the ones sealed inside it. You might assume this means they will finally leave you alone now. Do not count on their peace. No. What it means is they now fear you at a distance they can never close. They cannot approach without risking another conversion. They cannot ignore you because you keep growing. So they orbit you at the edge of their courage, muttering, planning things they will not execute, sending signals that never arrive. Funny how the ones who wanted to control you now cannot even come near you without losing another piece of their kingdom. Here is the deeper truth beneath their sleeplessness, the one I promised earlier I would eventually reveal. And now the time is right. They are not afraid of what you will do to them. They are afraid of what you reveal about them simply by existing. Every person who meets you and chooses your side is holding up a mirror to the senders and saying, "Look, this is what real looks like, and you are not it." That is unbearable to them. Not your strength, your honesty. It exposes their entire hollow structure just by being real in the same world. I spent a long time thinking powerful people fear stronger people. They do not. They fear real people, because realness cannot be bought, and everything they built assumes everything has a price. Now remember that line in the envelope, the one about your breaking point, written with such misplaced confidence. The first messenger read it aloud once in a low voice, and then looked at you, and I will tell you soon exactly what happened in the silence after those words. We are almost there, but before that silence makes sense, you need to see what happened when the senders realized no report was coming back. Their panic. That is next. and their panic is the sweetest evidence yet of how completely you have already won. Number 7. Watch the panic bloom in the room where they gave the order, because nothing exposes fear like silence where a report should be. They expected the messenger to check in, to confirm the target was measured, the weakness found, the plan on schedule. And instead there was nothing. No word, no signal. Just the long, growing quiet of a hand that had gone toward you and not reported back. And in that quiet, chosen one, the senders began to unravel in a way they would never let anyone see. Step into that room with me for one moment. Picture them around the table, the ones who ruled by knowing everything, suddenly not knowing the one thing that matters most. One of them finally says it out loud, voice low, the question none of them wanted to be first to ask. What if we cannot stop this person? What if we never could? And no one answers, because the answer is sitting in the silence their steady hand left behind. Their imaginations turned against them in the dark. Did the messenger fail? Did the messenger turn? The absence of a report was louder to them than any bad news could have been. Bad news they could have planned around. This they could only fear. Do not tell yourself they simply moved on. Hear me. No. People do not send a steady hand after someone insignificant and then shrug when that hand disappears. The size of their reaction is proof of the size of their fear. If you were nothing, silence would mean nothing. But you were something large enough to send a hunter after, and when the hunter went quiet, the ones who sent them felt the ground move. I have watched controlling people lose their composure over exactly this, the moment their instrument stops responding. It is the moment they realize they were never as in control as they pretended. Here is what they could never say out loud, even to each other. Their power was always a performance that depended on everything going according to plan. The unpredictable was their one true enemy, and you are the most unpredictable thing that ever entered their orbit. The messenger's silence introduced the one variable they could not manage, and it cracked the whole performance. Behind closed doors, chosen one, the confident faces slipped, and underneath were frightened people whispering the question they most dreaded over and over to no one who could answer. And here is your slow, patient power at work again. You did not create their panic by attacking them. You created it by simply not breaking on schedule. Their entire fear came from the gap between the person the envelope described and the person who refused to fall. That gap swallowed their messenger and their confidence with it. Every day the silence continued. They grew smaller in their own eyes. And you did nothing but keep standing. That is the terrifying elegance of what you are. Cute plan they had. It dissolved in silence. Number 8. When the first messenger did not return to their side, the senders faced a choice that had no good answer, and I want you to savor how trapped they were. They could send another, or they could pull back and pretend they never tried. Both roads led downhill for them, chosen one, because you had already changed the shape of the game. Send another and risk one more conversion, one more witness turned ally, one more piece of their kingdom lost to your gravity. Pull back and admit to themselves that you were beyond their reach. There was no move that did not cost them. Picture a traveler who has already walked deep into a canyon, now standing where the path splits and both trails climb back up toward a storm. Pride pushes them to keep going, sure the next turn will be different. Fear pulls them to turn back and admit the whole descent was a mistake. And frozen between the two, they do the worst thing of all, which is stand still while the light drains out of the sky. Their standing still was your victory, because every hour they hesitated, you grew, and the version of you they might have stopped slipped further into the past. The window they imagined they had was never real, and now even the illusion of it was closing. Something in you may fear the numbers, asking, what if they did send another and another? Would that not wear me down eventually? Listen closely, because this matters. No, each new messenger they send walks into the same trap as the first. They must be perceptive to have a chance against you, and perception is exactly what makes them see you clearly and see the senders for what they are. The more they send, the more they lose. You are not a wall that erodes under repeated blows. You are a flame, and every hand they send to smother you either backs away or catches your light and carries it. I have seen people become this, chosen one. The kind of person that adversaries can only add to, never subtract from. Here is what nobody at that table could accept. They were in a game where every one of their moves made you stronger and them weaker. That is not bad luck. That is what happens when hollow power meets something real. Real does not have to win by force. Real wins by simply continuing to exist while the hollow spends itself trying to erase what it cannot understand. Every attempt they made was fuel for you. Every messenger became a door left open for a future friend. And every silence that followed was one more confession they never meant to sign. You, chosen one, did not have to lift a finger to make any of it true. And so they hesitated, and in their hesitation they aged, the way all fearful rulers age, faster on the inside than the outside. The confident room grew quieter. The plans grew smaller. The bold orders became cautious mutterings. And somewhere in that decline, they began to suspect the thing they most feared, which is that they had chosen the wrong person to make an enemy. You never chose them, chosen one. They chose you. And it was the worst choice they ever made. Number 9. Here is the pattern that should settle any lingering doubt in you, because it is the deepest law in this entire story. Every person genuinely sent to stop a real force is drawn toward it, not away from it. Call it luck if you want, but it is not luck, and it is no accident either. It is simply how realness behaves in a world that is starving for it. The false wears people down and pushes the honest ones away over time. The real pulls them in, even when they arrive as enemies. You are a magnet, chosen one, and the ones they fire at you are made of exactly the metal that sticks. Picture a mountain spring that travelers were warned to avoid, told the water was poisoned, told to keep walking. And yet, dying of thirst on the long road, the honest ones taste it anyway, and find it is the only clean water for miles. They warned everyone about you. They called you the poison. And still, the ones with any honesty in them bent to drink, because you were the only real water in a desert of performances. You did not advertise. You did not call out. You simply were what you were, and the thirsty found you. You may look around and notice not everyone turns toward me. Some really do stay against me. That is true, and here is why it does not matter. No. The ones who stay against you are the ones who cannot afford honesty, because honesty would cost them everything they built on falseness. They are not immune to your light. They are hiding from it because it shows them what they gave up to become what they are. Let them hide. The ones worth having are the ones who turn toward the light, even when it burns to look at it. Those are your people. And they were often sent to be your enemies first. Here is the truth they buried so deep they hoped it would never surface, and it is almost tender in its irony. In trying to surround you with enemies, they surrounded you with future allies. Every hunter they sent was a potential friend they were too blind to keep. They kept handing you the very people who would come to love you, wrapped in the disguise of opposition. And one by one, the disguises fell, and what was left standing beside you was an army the senders built for you without ever meaning to. I have watched this happen to a rare few, Chosen One, and it is the closest thing to magic I have ever seen in the ordinary world. The people sent to end you become the people who would end anyone who tried. Now, remember that line in the sealed envelope, the one about your breaking point. And remember I told you the first messenger read it aloud in a low voice and then looked at you. I am nearly ready to tell you what filled the silence after those words, because that silence is where the whole story turns from their plan into your coronation. But first, you need to see the point of no return, the moment their entire network began working for you instead of against you. That is next. And after that, the secret they hid even from the messenger. Stay with me, Chosen One. The best is still coming. Number 10. There is a point of no return in every story like yours, and you have already crossed it, Chosen One, even if no one rang a bell to tell you. It is the moment when the network built to contain you begins, quietly, to work for you instead. Every messenger who turned became a set of eyes inside their world. Every witness who crossed over carried away something the senders needed. The very structure they built to watch you became the structure that now watches them on your behalf without you ever asking. That is the point of no return. And past it there is no rebuilding the old order. Picture a spider that spun a web to catch one particular creature, only to find that every strand it added was slowly being rewoven from the inside into a shape that serves the creature it meant to trap. The more web they spun around you, the more thread you had to work with. Their watching turned into your eyes in their house. Their emissaries turned into the friends who now sit at your table. And their plans, whispered in that closed room, stopped staying secret at all, because the people carrying those plans had already chosen you. I have seen a lone person become the true center of a system that was designed to crush them, and it happens exactly this way, thread by thread, defection by defection, until the trap belongs to the prey. You may struggle to believe you could be the center of something you never built or asked for. Hear this clearly. No, you did not build it with your hands. You built it with your realness. Every honest person in their machine was always going to drift toward the one real thing in it, and you were that thing. You became the center the way water finds the lowest point, following its own nature rather than any force. The network did not choose to serve you. It simply could not keep serving the hollow once it had felt the real. That is not something you engineered. That is something you are. Here is the truth that keeps them awake past the point of exhaustion. They no longer know who in their own ranks is truly theirs. Every person who ever got close to you is now a question mark to them. Loyalty, once certain, became unknowable. And a structure of power that cannot trust its own people is already dead, Chosen One. It just has not stopped moving yet. You hollowed them out from the inside, using nothing but the truth of who you are. Their kingdom still stands in outline, but the inside belongs to you now. And so we arrive, finally, at the sealed envelope, and the line about your breaking point, and the silence after the messenger read it aloud. I promised you this, and I keep my promises. Here is what happened. The messenger read the line, the one written with such cold confidence, the line that named the exact place you were supposed to shatter. and then they looked up at you. And you were not shattering. You were looking back at them with a steadiness that made the words on the paper look like a child's guess. And in that silence, chosen one, the messenger understood the truth that undid everything. There was no breaking point. The people who wrote that line had invented it because they needed you to have one, and a person with no breaking point cannot be ruled by anyone who rules through fear. Number 11. Now let me give you the secret they hid even from the messenger, because there was one, and it is the key to all of it. The senders never told their own hunter why they truly wanted you stopped. They dressed it up as correction, as management, as necessity. But the real reason, the one they kept even from their steady hand, was this. You reminded them of who they could have been, and chose not to be. Every time you refused to shrink, you showed them the courage they had traded away for comfort and control. They did not want to stop a threat. They wanted to silence a mirror that showed them their own surrender. Picture a group of people who long ago sold their fire for safety, now confronted by someone who kept theirs. They cannot say the real reason out loud, not even to their own agent, because to name it would be to admit what they gave up. So they invented a safer story. Dangerous, difficult, in need of correction. All of it a costume over the naked truth, which was simply this. Your existence is an accusation, and they could not bear to stand accused. I have watched people spend enormous energy trying to extinguish someone whose only crime was refusing to betray themselves. It is always, underneath, about the mirror. You may wonder why that would be a secret even from their own messenger. Because the moment the messenger understood the real reason, the mission became indefensible. No, you cannot send someone to destroy a person for the crime of being brave, and expect that someone to stay loyal once they realize that is the actual charge. So the senders hid it, and when the messenger finally saw through to the real reason anyway, being perceptive, being honest, that was the final thread that snapped. They had been sent to punish courage. And no one worth anything carries out that order once they see it plainly. Here is what nobody at that table could survive admitting. You already won the moment you refused to betray yourself, long before any envelope was sealed. Everything after that was just the slow, inevitable unfolding of a victory that was already complete. The messengers, the silence, the panic, the defections, the collapse of their trust, all of it flowed from that single early choice you made in the dark, when no one was watching and no one would have applauded. You chose to stay real. And that choice was the whole war already decided. And now, chosen one, hold on, because I need you to feel this next part in your bones. Everything they did to you, every wound, every silence, every hunter sent to your door, was the universe forging the one kind of person that cannot be ruled, cannot be bought, and cannot be erased. And that person is sitting exactly where you are sitting right now. That is the truth this entire story was built to hand you. You were never the target. You were the outcome. Number 12. So let me tell you how this ends, which is really how it begins. The senders remain in their closed room, ruling less each day, whispering about a person they can no longer reach, guarded by people they can no longer trust, holding an envelope that proved nothing except their own fear. And you walk on, gathering the ones who turn toward your light, carrying scars that became armor, unbreakable because they finally understood you have no breaking point to find. Their story is ending. Yours is only now cracking open. Picture a dawn that the people of the night tried to prevent by hunting the sun. And the sun did not fight them. The sun simply rose, as it was always going to, and the hunters found themselves standing in the very light they had been sent to extinguish, blinking, changed, unable to remember why they ever thought darkness could be defended. That is you, chosen one. You are the dawn they tried to stop, and dawn does not negotiate. Dawn arrives. One last time, a quiet voice in you may ask what you are supposed to do now with all of this. Here is the only answer that matters. Nothing you are not already doing. No, you do not need to become someone new. You need to stop doubting the one you already are. Keep refusing to shrink in rooms that want you small. Keep staying real when every mask around you begs you to put one on. Keep being the light that honest people turn toward and hollow people flee from. That is not a task. That is your nature, and it was always enough. It was enough before they ever noticed you, and it will be enough long after they are forgotten. Here is the truth they will never admit, and the truth I need you to carry out of this room tonight. They were never stronger than you. They were only louder, and louder is not stronger. It is just more afraid of silence. You learned to live in the silence they feared, and there, in that quiet, you became the one thing their whole machine of noise could never produce. Someone real, someone whole, someone who cannot be sent for because there is nowhere they could send you that your own steadiness would not already be waiting. So remember the envelope, chosen one final time. Remember that someone once sat down and decided you were worth stopping. And remember what that means. You do not send hunters after the ordinary. You send them after the ones who might change everything. They saw it in you before you saw it in yourself. Their fear was the first honest review you ever got. If this reached something buried in you tonight, carry these words with you and come back to this channel whenever the silence gets loud, because the rest of your story deserves to be told the way this one was. And now you have the truth they never wanted you to hear. The story where the wound becomes the weapon, the hunter becomes the ally, and the target becomes the dawn. Carry it. It was always yours.